A bit of a big departure?
Well, this is my first UK
Okay.
con, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But it's intense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it's more than I thought,
Yeah.
and it's great. The fans are wonderful. The Batman fans are in general pretty wonderful. You know, they're very passionate, and they care about the actors. They really do. They're very considerate. So I love meeting them at the Comic Cons. You know, when you do voice work, you never interact with the audience. You know, you send the performance out into the ether, and you don't know how it's received. And so the only time I get to interact is at these things. That's why I like it.
How much do you get a chance to listen back to any of your work? And kind of, or are you one of these people
I am
that
really
kind of
bad
drive
at
you
watching myself
Yeah.
on film or listening to myself. I'm really bad. I think most people are that way. I really have a hard time listening to myself.
What's it like recording for like the animated show compared to like the video games?
Well, that's an interesting question. It's night and day. It really is. Doing the shows, the either the TV shows or the direct-to-video movies, Warner Brothers has a policy of always having the actors together in a studio, which is actually kind of unique, because a lot of voiceover studios, they like to get completely clean takes. It makes their post-production editing much easier if each voice is recorded separately. But you don't get the same kind of performances you would get if you have all the actors together, because actors feed each other, and it affects your performance. It affects the way you're going to relate to the other characters. Mark and I, Mark Hamill, who does the Joker, we feed off each other so much. We work together so well together that I know I wouldn't be as good a Batman if it wasn't for him. He makes me better. So I love being in the booth with the other actors, and that's a unique thing with Warner Brothers, which is great. So when you do the shows, you have all those actors in the booth together, you get all the interaction, and Andrea says sometimes it's like watching 12-year-olds, you know, it's just, you guys, I can't control you guys, you're just guys are going crazy out there. So it's very fulfilling. But doing the games, because of the technicality of how they're built, those have to be separate takes for everything. So you have to be isolated for a game. So like Arkham Knight, to give you an example, was the third part of the Arkham trilogy.
Great game.
There are 157,000 lines of dialogue in Arkham Knight. Because depending on how the game is played, all of those different variations have to be played. So I was in a booth alone at 4-hour blocks of time. And you're trying to keep the Batman character alive. You're trying to keep the situation alive in your head. And you're doing line after line after line after line after line after line after line. They say, okay, now can you do it with a little irony? Line after line. Keep the irony. Now can we have a little smile? You know, I mean, by the end of the day, you forget how to speak English. You know, it's your mouth is just not forming words anymore. And you're still trying to keep the Batman character alive. You know what I mean? To keep it, you know, stay in that voice and stay in his world. Alone in the vacuum. So it's very hard, and it's 4-hour blocks. You get an hour for lunch, and then it's another 4 hours, and you do that for a week, and then you usually get a couple of weeks off while they're writing more stuff, and then they bring you in again. And Arkham Knight took 2 years of that to build, of going into those sessions, you know, a couple of times, you know, a couple of weeks a month. So it's almost like drilling teeth. You know, it's just no fun building games. But then when you see the result, and you think, oh my God, look how beautiful this is and how exciting this is, and I'm a part of this. You know, I contributed to this. And I'm so proud of the performance, especially given to how hard it is, I know, to do that performance when you're performing in a vacuum. So it's not a joyous process. And recording the shows is a joyous process. It's fun. It's why you become an actor. Building games is not why you become an actor. But the result is so beautiful. So it's a very interesting question. It's a very loaded question. Yeah.
Hiya. So what's been your favourite Batman game to work voice over? Even though I know how hard it is, but been like your favourite project?
Well, actually, I think and a lot of people disagree with me, but you know, everyone looks at things from their own perspective. So I look at it from an actor's perspective and my performance. And Arkham Knight, the way it resolved, I'm not going to give anything away by saying how it resolved, was a real acting challenge for me. And I was really proud of how Mark and I worked with each other and how sick that ending was. I mean, it's a beautiful game. But Arkham Asylum is a lot of people's favorite because it was the first one and it introduced everyone to that world. And you saw this amazing rogues gallery of criminals all in this asylum, and Batman's trapped in there with them. It was a great idea for a game. How does it get out, you know? But for an actor, from my perspective, Arkham Knight is my favorite. I was really proud of that performance.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. Frank Corbett. Has you voiced your opinion on Batman vs Superman, the character of Batman? It's slightly documented.
There's no comparison.
And have you seen Justice League? They do kind of tone him down a little bit, mellow him a little bit in that. Has he changed? Have you seen it?
They try to, you know, mean Superman?
More Batman's character, only Superman's character.
Yeah, they've yes, they've let's face it, Batman is complicated, he's got issues, he's dark, he's got problems, and he overcomes them all, which is what people love about him. But he has no superpowers. And Superman is, you know, square-jawed, you know, farm-fed. He's just so boring. He's, you know, he's got no issues. You know, he can see through walls, he can jump over planes, he can fly. I mean,
Mr. Daly think that?
what's the channel? Well, what's the challenge for him, you know? Tim and I love Tim. We work well together. We kid each other a lot about this. He's always like, yeah, but Batman is so screwed up. I say, yeah, but Superman is so boring. But you're right, in the most recent film, they've given Superman, they've dirtied him up a little bit, which I think is really smart, because he was dull, you know. That's why I feel so lucky to have started. I mean, this is the first animated role I ever auditioned for. I got the brass ring. You know, it's the most, everyone says, what other superhero would you want to play? And I said, are you kidding? What other superhero is there? I got the best one. I started with the best one. He's so complicated. There's so much meat to bite into with him, you know? It never ends. So I was just really, really lucky.
I have a question. Throughout your career, you've like partnered up with so many different iconic, other than Batman, superhero characters. Right? What superhero character, other than Batman, of course, has made the biggest impact on you? Like which one was your favorite per se?
Well, that's a hard question to answer, because it's hard to distinguish the character from the actors. And Tim Daly is just a lot of fun to work with, and I have a really good working relationship with him, the same way I do with Mark Hamill. So I love working with Tim. He used to do a blog, I don't know if he still does, The Daily Show, and we did an episode that was so funny where Superman was like haunting, I mean, Batman was haunting him around his apartment. It was really funny. But what other superhero? I guess it would have to be Superman, because Batman and Superman do have a very sort of like sibling rivalry kind of relationship, you know? And it's the most defined. I don't have that kind of defined relationship with Flash or any of the other characters. I've interacted with them a little bit, but not as much as like with Superman. So I would have to say Superman.
I remember when you did Killing Joke, and I spoke to you about that in San Diego, and you said at the time that you were really conflicted about doing that role because it was such a dark performance of Batman, and you actually weren't. You were okay with doing the part, but you weren't happy with kind of like the way that the tone had taken. Have you changed your thoughts on how that performance?
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't happy with it. It's just that I was aware of how controversial it was.
Yeah.
I appreciated that a lot of people were disturbed. I wasn't, but I just appreciated the fact that people were. Batman has a very broad audience. It was originally, the first Batman animated series was on prime time on Fox. It was never designed to be a kid's show, but they knew that they were going to have a kid's audience too. So they had to keep it a very adult show, which it obviously is, with very adult storylines and sophisticated artwork and sophisticated music and storylines, but they could never show a child in danger. You know, they had to go by certain standards and practices in the States that you have to respect if you know you're going to have audiences of under 12. You just have to do it. So the Killing Joke, the issue I had was that it was a great mature story for Batman Joker, but I know that a lot of the audience is still under 12, and that's rough. That's a rough story for people that young. And I had a lot of friends who said, "Well, I love that movie you did, but I'm not going to let my kid see it for 10 years." You know? I have it in a box, and he'll see it when he's older. But no, I didn't have problems with the story. I understood people who did.
I think apparently we need to let you go and traumatize more people on the show floor, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
Can I just, kicking you off, how's the con been going so far now on day 3? How's it been treating you out there?
Well, I've been surprised because usually Fridays are very kind of slow. Saturdays are the big pop day, and then Sunday kind of wears down. This has been pretty crazy since Friday, since arriving. Friday was really busy. It was like a usual Saturday. And yesterday was incredibly intense. So this has been really busy. It's been like New York Comic Con, which I was surprised. I didn't know it was going to be that big. The fans are incredible, though.
I'm glad to hear that. I mean, obviously, for so many fans, your iteration of Batman is the definitive one. I'm sure when they come up,
brainwashing worked.
and I'm sure when they come to you, they tell you that, and they also maybe talk to you about the other versions of the character they've seen and what they think about that. I'm curious. I think fans would probably really like to know how you feel about particularly the various live action people who've shared the role with you.
I'm always asked who my favorite live action Batman is, and I'm not going there. I'm not going to compare. I do think I was surprised when Warner Brothers didn't give the franchise to one actor, the live action, because that's traditionally what happens. And then when I saw how differently the different actors did it, I thought, wow, this is kind of brilliant, because each actor brings a different quality to it. And it's so interesting to see how each actor puts on the cape and what it brings out of them. So I think it ended up being a really good idea. But everyone brings different qualities to it. Some are stronger as Batman, some are stronger as Bruce Wayne. It's such a multi-dimensional character that there's many, many ways of doing it. It's like Joker. Mark Hamill's my Joker. He's the definitive Joker. He's a genius. I love working with him. And but then you see other actors do it, and you realize there are so many ways of doing Joker. They're not better than Mark. They're just different.
And how do you change? Obviously, you've played Batman for a number of years. I mean, the character's constantly evolving, and are you making a conscious decision to evolve the character? Each time.
Well, it's interesting. Rather than evolve the character, the trick for me over 27 years has been to keep it fresh and to be consistent. And I think being a theater actor originally, there's talents you develop about being able to do something 8 times a week for a year to keep something alive, because each time the audience sees it, it's their first time experiencing the story, experiencing the character, even though it's your 8th time that week, you know what I mean? But it's such an iconic character, and people grew up on him. So they have very early memories and impressions of who he is. And if you're not true to that, they'll nail you, and you'll lose them. So for me, the trick has really been to be true to that initial impulse that I had when I was creating the voice and creating the character. And to me, it all goes back to the tragedy of his childhood, that dark moment when he had his world ripped apart. And rather than becoming crushed by misfortune, he transformed himself to conquer misfortune and to try and heal the world. That's why people love him so much. He's such a redemptive character. So that was the impetus for the voice for me. That it's all based in that darkness. You know, that's where that comes from. And then he puts on Bruce Wayne, and he becomes very, you know, sophisticated and suave. But all of that's armor. Bruce Wayne is the armor. Bruce Wayne is the performance. Batman is where, you know, that's where the damage was done. You know what I mean?
That's good.
If you could choose either an existing comic storyline or just a type of story that hasn't already been adapted into an animated project, if you could choose one, what would you have Batman go through next?
Well, I would love to see them do A Death in the Family or Hush. Those are both beautiful stories. I think they'd be great to be done. But there are no rumors about that. I'm not going to start a rumor here. There is no word about that being done.
Non-Batman question here, because I'm a massive fan of the Venture Brothers, and I'm a huge fan. So could you tell us about the character Captain Sunshine and working with those producers, and are you coming back in the new series?
I wish. I said, doesn't he need a spin-off? People love Captain Sunshine. It was funny. I love doing that character. It was funny. It's like everything, you know, naughty about that. You do a spoof on Batman, you know. I had a lot of fun doing it. And no, there's no word of anything more being done with the character that I know of. But I had a blast doing it. Yeah.
More than likely been asked about this many times, but how did the opportunity of Batman came to you?
How what?
The opportunity of being Batman came to you. How was the auditioning process?
Well, that came out of the blue, and it doesn't happen the way it happened to me. It just doesn't happen that way. It was the first animated role I auditioned for. I'd never done any animation. I was a theater actor who happened to be in LA doing a pilot for a series. And my agent just sent me over to Warner Brothers. I didn't even know Batman had never been an animated show. I just assumed it had been. And so Bruce Timm and Andrea Romano, they had to kind of bring me up to speed when I was in the recording studio, you know, describe the character, describe the background. So the whole process for me was very improvisational, on the spot. I was just dancing as fast as I could, you know, in the recording studio. And to be honest, I think my naivety played to my advantage because I had no anticipation. I had no pressure on me to perform. I just used my imagination. And because, oddly, it was a strange kind of kismet moment where life kind of leads you in directions. I had had a very traditional, old-fashioned theatrical education. I went to Juilliard. I studied the classics. I was trained to do Shakespeare, you know what I mean? I was working for Joe Papp at the Public Theater. Batman is a very classic character. He's a classic tragic hero. And I approached him that way, and it was perfect. There's something very epic about him, he's Shakespearean. He's a Shakespearean hero. And also Greek, you know? He fits in that whole genre of classic theater. And then all of these insane characters, these villains, bounce off of him. But his purity remains, you know, his mission remains. There's something very classic about that.
How much control did you have over the character of Batman? I mean, how much of it is you and how much of it is script?
Actors have zero power in Hollywood. I'd like to think we have a lot of input. We have no input. You know, the most powerful people are the writers, the creators. Good scripts are gold. And Bruce Timm is a great writer. Kind of a genius in this whole genre. He knows exactly what he wants. They would once in a blue moon, they'd say, God, we can't figure out what would he say? What would he say? We can't quite come up with it. But that was like, once in a blue moon.
Relating to those